Today we're going to cover the walkthrough of living off the land. But before we do that, let's go over some of the concepts. So this room is all about living off the land term. And living off the land is a term that is actually used when you land on a piece of land and use the available food and resources to survive. So the same term is applied to the red team arena. So basically, living off the land when it comes to red teams, it's when you use the available tools on the target that you have just compromised. So we have an attacker. Okay. Now as an attacker, you get access to your victim machine. So when it comes to evading defenses and doing various aspects of a red team engagement, you resort to applying living off the land concepts, which means you will use the available tools on the victim machine. So whether it is a Windows machine or it is a Linux machine, you will use the available tools to accomplish the purpose of the red team engagement. By using the native tools found in Windows or Linux, we actually evade security defenses and we avoid triggering security alarms. For example, in Windows, living off the land binaries can be anything such as search utility and run DLL. All these are native binaries in Windows operating system. We can use these native binaries, okay, to accomplish the purpose of the red team engagement. Same in Linux. Native binaries can be sudo or su without sudo. Can also be ping. Also have other tools such as the one we use to change the permissions. All of these tools can be used as living off the land. So in a nutshell, living off the land is a term using the available built-in binaries found on the victim operating system to avoid triggering detection. So instead of an attacker downloading their tools into the victim machine, you just use the available tools found on the operating system to perform various activities. So what are some of the things that we actually do or perform in order to, while using living off the land binaries? So recon and file operations such as downloading and uploading. We will be talking about some of the examples. Also, we use living off the land binaries to bypass security defenses and to perform lateral movement in case we're moving between different machines on different network interfaces. In Windows operating system, living off the land binaries can all be found here in this website, LOLBAS. So in LOLBAS, we can search for built-in binaries, and all the binaries are, as you can see, categorized according to the MITRE, ATT and CK, the type, and the function, what's used for, and the name of the binary. For example, let's take a look at this, bitsadmin. We can see the function of this binary is to download. We can copy, download, execute, and we can also hide alternate data streams. The type of this is binary, and these are the ATT and CK techniques, meaning these are the tactics and techniques that were recorded when attackers use bitsadmin to perform different sorts of operations, such as download or uploading or exfiltrating data. Another popular example is the cert utility tool, which can be used to download payloads into the victim machine or the target machine. So here it's categorized as a binary, and these are the ATT and CK techniques used by adversaries. So here in the search box, we can search for the binaries using different or multiple ways. For example, we can look We can look for binaries that has specific functions such as execute, download. All we have to do is to use slash and then execute. We can find all of the executable binaries. Additionally, we can use download slash download. Here we can find the binaries where the function is download, or which can be used to download payloads into the target machine. We can also use upload. So upload here shows all the binaries. It can be used to upload data. You can use its binaries maybe to exfiltrate information. Another way to search for living of the land binaries on Windows operating system is by using the name of the binary. So simply we can enter cert utility, which is a popular living of the land binary, by just entering the name here, and we can see the binary show up. Another way to search for living of the land binaries is to use ATT and CK techniques. For example, what we have to do is to just type the short name of the technique. For example, we can search for bitsadmin, the techniques. So here, T1281. Let's see, T1218. With this technique alone, we can see all the associated living of the land binaries. Now, the equivalent of LOLBAS on Linux is GTFO bins. Here we can see the living of the land binaries, but that work on Linux. And here they are categorized easily. For example, we can click on file download, and we can see all of the binaries that perform file downloads. Now let's talk about some of the binaries in detail. The first binary is cert utility. And probably you have seen this binary before if you have been practicing Active Directory penetration testing. When you land on the machine, you want to download files or payloads into the machine. So you would resort to using cert utility. So originally, cert utility was actually created for more than just downloading files into a target machine. It was used to handle something called certification services. So attackers have actually turned the use of this tool into downloading payloads onto the target machine. For example, you would just go in the terminal and type cert utility, and then you would follow it by -URL cache. So here, this option enables us to put a link to the server from which we want to download the files. And then we use the option -split -f, meaning we want to split and force fetching files from the provided URL. And then we provide the URL. Okay. After the URL, we provide the path. So here, this is the URL that hosts the payload. It could be your web server URL, IP, port, and then /payload. And the path is the path on the target machine where you will store this payload. It could be on C and then Windows temp. So this way you can use cert utility to download payloads on the target machine. Another popular tool to download payloads on a target machine or into the target machine is the second tool, which is bitsadmin. So again, these are tools found pre-built on the operating system. So bitsadmin is actually used for something called the background intelligent transfer service. Probably if your task manager has a lot of resource consumption and you happen to inspect what's going on, you will find that this service is consuming a lot of CPU resources. So this service is managed by bitsadmin executable. Again, attackers have turned the usage of this tool into a usage to download files onto the target machine. For example, you would go on the terminal and type bitsadmin, and then all you have to do is to follow it by the options used to download files /transfer, mainly /transfer, /download, and /priority. In the priority, we set the priority of the job that will be executed by the bitsadmin to be run on the foreground. So here we type foreground. And then what comes next is the URL of the web server hosting the payload, and then the path. First, let me figure out the IP configuration. So we will be using the IP address here, and then we will be launching a web server sudo python So now we have launched a web server on my machine. Let's now head to the target machine and download the file. So we mentioned that we can download the files using two available tools on the operating system, Cert Utility, and we have the bitsadmin. Let's first start by using the bitsadmin. So bitsadmin /transfer /download and we'll put the priority on the foreground, and then comes the IP address of the web server hosting the payload, which happens to be my IP address. And don't forget to put in the port if your web server is running on a special port such as 8000. So we go back, let's copy this one more time, 8000, and then the path to the payload. In my case, the payload name is payload text, and then we put the path or the target path on the machine that will store the payload. So we're gonna put this under C users thm desktop payload text. Okay, so as you can see, guys, we have the payload downloaded, and indeed it contains the word test. So far we have covered the living of the land binaries, or some living of the land binaries that can be used to transfer or actually download and upload files or payloads. Now let's talk about some of the binaries that can be used to execute code. The third binary is Explorer. And you know, guys, Explorer is a native binary in Windows operating system. Guess what? You can use this binary to execute command or to perform command injection. So the syntax for this, let's now go here and tell you how it looks like. So we just put in the name of the binary, Explorer /root, comma, and then followed by the executable we want to actually execute on the machine. So here comes your payload. So assume that if you go back to the machine here, assuming that we have downloaded some executable file or executable payload using MSF Venom, maybe when we want to execute this payload safely without triggering any alarms, we want to use Explorer. So let's go ahead and give this a try. So indeed, guys, as you can see, we have actually popped up calculator. Now the other binary that we will be using is run DLL. So run DLL is very popular binary that is used with dynamic link libraries or DLLs. Thing is, we can also use run DLL to execute commands or execute payloads. We just have to use JavaScript. So we use JavaScript to invoke the executable file. If we take this and give it a try, so it popped up calculator. But if I try this on my native machine, my own machine, it's not gonna work. Look at this. So I have Windows security or Windows Defender detecting the action. So this may not work because I'm using JavaScript probably and the eval function. So this method may not work all the time, as you can see, depending on the machine and the security configuration. When it comes to command execution, we have another binary, very popular one, which is regsvr. It could be 32 or it could be regsvr64, depending on the architecture of the machine. So similarly, guys, regsvr is used to register and unregister DLLs. Thing is, you can use this tool to bypass security defenses and specifically what's called as the application white listing. So application whitelisting is a feature in Windows operating system that allows you to specify a list of allowed applications to be executed. Anything outside this list will be blocked. Thing is, you can bypass this feature with regsvr. It works. First, we have to generate a payload. To demonstrate how this works, we're gonna generate a sample payload on my machine. Okay, we're gonna keep this web server running, and then on a new terminal or new tab, going to execute this. So here we have interpreter payload. The lhost section is going to be modified to the IP address of my machine on this interface. It will be 4545, and then the architecture will be 32 because the target machine is 32-bit architecture. The format will be DLL, and then we're going to give it sample as a name. Next step, we want to go to the machine and download the binary. So we're gonna go to navigate to desktop and execute bitsadmin this time. So with bitsadmin, here we change payload to sample DLL, and we're gonna keep the target path or destination path the same, but we're going to change the output name to sample.dll. Before we execute, let's make sure that the payload has been generated. So ls, we're gonna move sample to desktop. Okay, and then we're going to serve the payload to the machine. So now we have the DLL here. We want now to execute the payload. Okay, before we execute the payload, let's launch a listener on my machine. So we go back to my machine now, on a new tab, or on the same tab, we're going to launch MSF console. We're going to use the multi-handler to start a listener. Okay, show options. Fine, set lhost. This is lhost, set lport. The port will be the same as the port I used in the command while I was generating the payload. So it is 4545. So 4545. And I need to use the same payload here. Windows interpreter reverse TCP. Windows interpreters reverse TCP. We're gonna have to copy this, all of it. And get ready to go. So listener is running. Go back to the machine. Now we want to execute this DLL. The way to do that is to use regsvr. So we have the command here that we can use to execute this. Gonna copy the command, this one. Okay, so we specify the name of the binary, which happens to be regsvr32 because we are on a 32-bit machine. And then we specify the path to the DLL, which is the payload we have generated with MSFNM. Now we're gonna have to modify this. It's gonna be THM, the username, desktop, and sample DLL. Once we do that, hopefully we will receive the connection. Going to my machine now, examining the interpreter payload, the listener, and as you can see, guys, we start to receive the connection. So now we have an active session on the machine. Shell. Who am I? And we are the user THM. So far we have seen living off the land binaries that can be used to transfer files, payloads, to execute executable files. We can use the Explorer to execute exe files. We can use regsvr to execute malicious DLLs. Now what about PowerShell? So say I have a PowerShell script I want to execute on the machine, but I don't want to download my own tools. I want to use the built-in tools on the machine. To do that, we have to use something called the Microsoft build or MS build. Is a native platform on Windows operating systems used to actually build Windows applications to execute remote code. So we can use MS build here to execute PowerShell scripts. But there is one catch to this method. I have to convert the PowerShell from PS1, okay, into CS project extension. That's the only acceptable format for me to execute code with Microsoft build. To do that, there is a tool called PowerShell-less or no PowerShell. Let's examine the tool. So PowerShell shell, they rely on MS build to remotely execute PowerShell scripts and commands without spawning PowerShell. So there is no need to spawn PowerShell. There will be no traces of any PowerShell activity on the target machine. And here are the steps. So let's go ahead now, clone this to my machine and start working with it. So we're gonna end the session. We're gonna leave MS5 running because probably we're gonna need the listener again. Open a new tab, and we have the Python script ready. Let's go back now and create a simple PowerShell script or malicious PowerShell script. Again, we can use MSFNM to accomplish this. So we're gonna copy the command, and then we're going to choose a different port, 4546 this time. Don't forget to use -f PowerShell reflection to specify the extension, and we named it sample.ps1. Okay, now we're gonna move this sample PowerShell into the desktop. This is where we host the web server, right? So we have the web server running. Now we go to the machine and we're gonna use bitsadmin. Okay, sample ps1. We changed just the extension. So now we have downloaded the partial extension without the need to execute any partial, because there might be some defenses or security configurations that prevent the execution of partial, or even trigger some events if partial execution is recorded. So we're going to have now to use the Python script. Yeah, but the Python script was downloaded to my machine, so looks like we shouldn't have downloaded the partial script here, but anyway, let's keep it here. Now we go back to my machine. Okay, so Python 2 powerless shell type partial dash source. Now the source is the partial script I have created. We're gonna change the path. And then the output, again, we're gonna have to change this because we want to host the file on my web server. We're gonna have to put this under the path where the web server is running. Okay, execute now. So sample CS project, and the output file will have the same name, CS project. Okay, we have the file now here. Now we're going to use msbuild to execute the file. Okay, so msbuild can be found under this directory, Microsoft.net, and then all we have to do is to specify the path to the project file. msbuild engine will build the file and execute whatever code inside it. Before we execute, let's go back now and make sure our listener is running. So back to my machine. So the listener was here. We have to configure different options for this listener. Set payload. The payload will be the same one we used earlier when we generated the payload. So it's going to be on HTTPS. Show options. The IP is correct. The port will be different. 4546. And then we're gonna exploit back to the target machine. If we execute this, we should receive a listener now or a connection. Project file does not exist. Oh, yeah. There it is. It is the path to the file. You're gonna have to change this into THM. Okay. So once we are able to do that, there is a flag that will be created here, which is the flag for the last task. B2, let's see if it's correct. Yeah, that was the challenge flag. Real life scenario, there are no questions to answer here, so this will wrap up the room. So it's very great room, guys, to practice the concept of living off the land and to get yourself familiar with the different binaries used as living off the land on Windows operating system. I hope this was helpful, and I'm gonna see you in the next video.